Okay, hey, welcome to another episode of Insights While Fasted. It's been some time since I've eaten, and my sympathetic nervous system is in overdrive, and I've been thinking a lot. I was listening to this incredible podcast actually from John Hears. Ears? I hope I'm pronouncing it right. I'm actually supposed to interview with him here soon. But he's an Orthodox podcaster and has some really great insights on things. But one of the things that really blew my mind, and I was connecting this back to fasting, is he compared sort of the 21st century obsession with the pursuit of data and knowledge for the sake of data and knowledge is really consequentially a big problem. He mentioned a number of different projects actually that were funding on the order of tens of billions. Actually, some of them are over 100 billion for like information without purpose. And again, I think all of us have an instinct that like, oh, well, the more information I get, the better, so I can make a more informed decision. But, as Jordan Peterson will say, and I don't think this was his theory initially, but as neuroscientists have told us, if you compare that discussion to a person's vision of the world and what they choose to hone in on, what guides their vision and what they literally see and don't see is based on what they value. So I'm in a room, and let's say I have a Celsius, great brand of caffeine with no calories, and there's all these things in the room I could focus in on. Pencils and pens being laid somewhere, ditzel on the wall for paint, but I choose to look at something that means something to me. It's my caffeine drink, and I need that. So looking in the room just for all the components for the sake of doesn't really help you much. It doesn't really move you forward. And there are big budget programs in the United States government that really highlight that obsession to the max. What was so cool what John Ears was saying was that, one of the first falls of mankind occurred in the Garden of Eden with Adam and Eve eating of the fruit of knowledge for the sake of knowledge. That's very interesting. The knowledge of good and evil. They didn't even know why they needed it, but they just pursued knowledge for the sake of knowledge. Very interesting. So here we are at sort of an end of an epoch where we are just so hungry and obsessed with information. And it's impressive, right? Digitally, technologically, computers by definition really are data centers, and they're just taken over. Now, it can be a tool for something with purpose, but for the sake of it can really eclipse things. And I think as a society, as we lose our bearing and our center, we're really getting confused as to what is a tool versus what is an end or a final use. So again, when you consider that Adam and Eve's first sin was the pursuit of knowledge and evil without purpose, without aim, very powerful, and all sorts of consequences followed. It's something to keep in mind as to where we are right now in society. And the way that I sort of bring an example of this, or maybe offer a solution to this and why fasting is so powerful, is that, consuming food without purpose is almost like consuming knowledge without purpose. And the rate at which you consume that knowledge is consequential. And the rate at which you consume your food is consequential. And if you're over consuming, in terms of calories, our bodies suffer for it. Our minds suffer for it. Our spirit suffers for it. And I think where fasting comes in, it sort of reminds us, hey, slow down, understand why you're eating, and be aware of what you're consuming. And by the way, since fasting really is tied into prayer and to the spiritual calendar, you always have a reason as to why you're doing what you're doing. So in other words, it's consuming with purpose. It's consuming with aim, and it makes a huge difference. I imagine what it might have been like if Adam and Eve had just consumed with purpose, eventually consumed of the knowledge of the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil, all in good time with a purpose in mind. And in fact, many of the church fathers in the Orthodox world say that was actually one of the eventual milestones for man, what probably would have happened in another parallel universe anyway. But again, knowledge for the sake of is not worthwhile. There's so much that you could look at. And whether that's us trying to understand, let's say, sickle cell anemia, where we could start with the complaint of a child who has chest pain and can't breathe, and then is brought to the hospital in the middle of the night and shown to be anemic, and now the reticulocyte count is high, and now we know that they have acute chest syndrome, and now we're trying to solve a problem, and we're wondering why this is happening to children all over the world, and we notice that they're generally African American and come from a certain part of the world, and now we can start honing in our search for a cure embedded in billions of nucleotides in the DNA sequence, and lo and behold, it's a valine glycine. I think that's what it is. A valine problem. Wow. But if you just start at the DNA level, aimless, just getting information and searching through that, you will never get anywhere. So it's really important. The eyes see what the mind knows. And if you kind of bring this all back to the beginning, it all starts with this pursuit of knowledge for the sake of, and purpose is such an important part of making that knowledge wisdom. And I think until we really appreciate what the hell that all means and what we should do next, we need to inherently act it out through fasting. And by acting it out, eventually we will know and have the wisdom to understand what to do with all of that.